Welcome back into One Bills Live. Maddie Glab alongside of Steve Tasker, filling in for Chris Brown as he travels to Miami today. Speaking of Miami, we would like to bring in NFL Network reporter Cameron Wolfe into the conversation. He joins us from Miami, where he is fresh off of covering practice alongside several different media availability sessions today. So Cameron, thank you so much for being on with us. We know it's been a busy week for you.
Yeah, it's been a wild one. I was here in Miami for their opening game versus the Jaguars. And so yeah, you think you go for just a football game, and then a lot more happens. You get a player and Tyreek Hill detained by police, and, Calais Campbell as well. And they're still dealing with the effects of that here in Miami and talking about it. And Tyreek talked with us about 15, 20 minutes ago, and nearly the entire press conference was about what happened Sunday and the after effect impact. And so they've talked about being able to try to manage the emotions they are feeling from the encounter there, and still trying to play what is one of their biggest games of the year on Thursday against the Buffalo Bills. And so I definitely am curious of what their what effect this will have on them early on, especially in the game. They're saying all the right things. We don't need anything to get up for Buffalo. We use football as our therapy, and so we're going to dive into it. And maybe they're right, but there's definitely been a lot of heaviness through this week that has reverberated through the entire locker room.
What do you think the percentage of conversation has been in regards to Buffalo Bills game, Tyreek Hill situation? I mean, is it like 60, 40, 80, 20?
So I'm sure they have meetings for sure about football. So I don't want to downplay that aspect of it at all. But I do know that the entirety of when we are here and talking with them, it has been 90% Tyreek Hill in that matter, and very little football. So maybe they shift the other way when we're not there and not talking to them. But I talk to players, and most of the conversations I've had with players this week have been about Tyreek Hill as well. And so I think that this is something that a lot of the players did not realize initially when it was first happening. And over time after the game, they started to realize, one, Tyreek Hill was involved, and then Calais Campbell was involved. And so I think a lot of these guys are getting it in retrospect. And so they were able to maybe compartmentalize a lot of Sunday because they didn't know. Tyreek knew. A couple other guys knew who saw it on social media, but they didn't. And so I think this game will be the first game of truly seeing if they're able to overcome the adversity, which is a word Mike McDaniel uses a lot, of this past weekend.
I think all of this becomes a lot more real for the entire team, including Tyreek Hill, is when this body cam footage was released yesterday, which shows Hill is grabbed from his car, forced to the ground by police officer Danny Torres, and then it shows that officers pushed him to the ground where he was handcuffed, and they're seen yelling at Hill and treating Hill with lots of disrespect, alongside of defensive tackle Calais Campbell, who saw it taking place, pulled over to make sure his teammate was all right, and then one of the officers starts to yell at him and puts him in handcuffs and tells him that, hey, you're under arrest too. Cam, you watching that footage and then hearing from Tyreek Hill just earlier today, what did you take away from what Tyreek Hill had to say about the incident unfolding, the body cam footage being released, and now him and his lawyer calling for Danny Torres to be fired?
Well, there's been a lot of emotions, and I'd say anger may be the biggest one from the Dolphins. They had probably one of the stronger team statements I've ever seen in regards to their disdain from the police officers with their excessive force and abuse of power. Those are all words they used in the statement. Mike McDaniel discussed how he gets more upset thinking about it through the time. There's a lot of introspective thoughts. Mike McDaniel discussing himself being biracial, but looking like a light-skinned or whiter male. He's never experienced a lot of the things that Tyreek and Calais and other people in the locker room shared their experiences with police. And so I remember after the game, I requested Calais Campbell for an interview, and I had an idea that he was involved. I didn't know what level. And he tells me he was handcuffed, and I could feel him. I could see him and feel him like the 6'8", 310-pound man who said, I'd never been in trouble with the law before, he was shaking a little bit. Like, you think about just the impact this has on people from a emotional level. I know a lot of times we look at these players as superheroes, but life can change that really quickly. And for that moment, or for those moments, for those players, they did not feel like $1 million athletes. They felt like they were being alienated by police, and that are right outside of their stadium. And so I think that's very real. I think that's something that they are being vulnerable about and want change about. And so that's one of those things where you can't stop your life because of football, and that's something that is real life. And so I actually applaud the team and how they're handling it, because I think it's very easy as a football coach to say, hey, let's move on. That's just a one-day thing. It's easier from the distraction standpoint, but that's not easier from a human standpoint. And I think they're choosing the human route here, and we'll see if it affects the football. But I think they're choosing for them what they feel like is the right route.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. It's difficult. It is an ugly and difficult situation to go through. But as a team, I think one of the things that, and Mike McDaniel will probably do this, they'll probably use it as fuel going forward.
Yep.
They're going to probably use it as a unifying experience. And I would say that if you can get them to that point mentally as a team, to turn it around and say, listen, let's go out and rise above this. This is one more thing that nobody thinks we can do. Let's go do this together. It could be a huge positive for a football team trying to get together. We'll have to wait and see what it looks like on tomorrow night. But I'm certainly, if I know anything about team sport, which I do, you got pros in there that are going to say, guys, this is us. Let's go. And it's going to be a huge moment for them to come together as a team and show it.
You're absolutely right. It's funny, Mike McDaniel has a sign on his wall. One of his team sayings is adversity is an opportunity. And so this isn't necessarily what I'm sure he imagined when he says adversity is an opportunity, this exact situation, but it is a version of adversity. They're dealing with their personal adversity in this situation. But who probably doesn't care much about what's going on with their life? The Buffalo Bills players, they want to win a game, as they should. The reality is they want to win that game. And so when the whistle blows on 8:15 on the Thursday, there's not going to be a, hey, we feel sorry for them because they've had a rough week. No, you have to use that adversity. You have to see if that fuels you through. And so I think it's going to be a really interesting challenge for them. But last year, they had a lot of situations where when adversity struck, they didn't respond. And so all offseason, they've been talking about how do we handle that better, and a lot of it's been focused on the playoff time. But now this is their first element. And maybe how they respond for this determines what this season goes like for them. There's also been some elements of resolution. I thought it was really good hearing from Tyreek Hill today, because the reality is this is a divisive topic. Police, anything involving police, it gets crazy. Like, look at my social media mentions on anything I say about Tyreek. You can just imagine what they're saying. But I think he took a step today and maybe trying to bridge the change when he said, hey, look, there's things I could have done differently. There's things I wish I could have done differently in how I handled the situation. Now, that doesn't give them the right to, in his words, beat the dog out of me. But, at the same time, he felt like, hey, I got to take accountability. I got to feel like we can try to affect change. And that's how we move forward. And, maybe it's some of those elements of how he's talking to his team about how they can impact change. Those are how they channel their feelings. And maybe they can use that to then focus back on their main goal for this week, which is trying to finally beat the Buffalo Bills. They've had trouble with doing that a lot over the last 15 matchups.
10-2 in the last 12 regular season matchups since Josh Allen has become a Buffalo Bill. That's 2018. The Dolphins held a walkthrough practice today, and Mike McDaniel has ruled out running back Raheem Mostert with a chest injury. Running back Achane has an ankle injury, but I saw your Twitter. You tweeted out a video of Achane at practice. It looks like he participated. What is the latest on his status and if he'll be able to go for tomorrow's game?
Yeah, Devon Achane was at practice today. He's dealing with an ankle injury, but I watched him pretty closely today. It was a walkthrough session. They didn't go full speed, but he was pretty much close to what I'm used to seeing with Achane. I didn't see a limp. He caught passes. He was changing directions, cutting up the field, taking handoffs through pitches and regular handoffs. And so I'm not a doctor, but it looked like a guy who is going to at least try to give it a go tomorrow. Might be Daniel called him a game time decision, but I took it as more positive than negative what I saw out of him today. He did finish the game this past week. I think a lot of these elements, both with Raheem and Devon, are the fact that you've got a short week. You got a quick turnaround to a Thursday game, and so Thursday would be recovery for a lot of guys. This might be the day, game day might be the day where, hey, I'm finally starting to get it stretched up for my bangs and bruises that I'm ready to go. And so I think the short week is probably contributing to the uncertainty for these backs more than it being some serious injury. And so my expectation is that you see some version of Devon Achane tomorrow. Now, does he have enough to be able to finish the game? I think that's a different question. But I do think I saw enough today that he'll at least give it a shot.
One of the things also about this game is the first time that Jordan Poyer is going to suit up against the team he played with for 5 or 7 years or so. What has he had to say about turning it around and putting on the other helmet?
I can tell you this, and you guys know Jordan well. He badly wants to win this game.
Yeah,
I think
can
he feels
imagine.
like he has a lot to prove. I think there's a lot that goes into maybe how Jordan Poyer and the Bills ended their tenure there, that maybe he wasn't in love with a lot of that. And I think that he has some things to prove. He's obviously down here in South Florida where he lives, and so he's enjoying that aspect of it. But just like any player playing their former team, I think there's a little bit of, I want to show you guys that, you guys should have brought me back for at least another year, or ponied up, whatever it was. And so he has some personal thoughts there. And the reality is, and I know Sean McDermott referenced it, he was there for 7 years. He was the backbone, along with Micah Hyde, of that defense. And outside of Sean McDermott, I don't know if anybody else knows the defense better. And so there's been a lot of conversation here in Miami about the advantages that he can give them. Tua was very transparent and said, "Oh yeah, he can help us a lot. He can tell us, a lot of the elements of what they do in certain coverages, what their communication is like, and that's already helped me a lot in my prep. Different things they like to do against our offense to slow us down." And so I definitely don't think he is holding back on any state secrets that may have been there over the time. Now, Buffalo's, I'm sure, is going to change a few things here and there, but I definitely think there's a lot there with the return of Jordan Poyer and also his familiarity with Josh Allen and his team.
Sean McDermott was asked about facing Jordan Poyer yesterday and asked about, hey, does this make the game harder since Jordan Poyer is going to be on the other side and he knows the defense? And McDermott was like, he knows it all. He knows everything. Maybe I shouldn't have given him, jokingly says, maybe he shouldn't have had the playbook as he left. I thought it was
took it back from him, right?
Yeah. I thought it was a funny comment by McDermott. But one more from me before we let you go. The Dolphins have a new defensive coordinator in Anthony Weaver this season. The Bills have had a lot of impressive statistics offensively against the Dolphins in the last several matchups. Josh Allen has multiple touchdown performances in every single game against the Dolphins. We could go on about this, but the fact is there's a new defensive coordinator in Anthony Weaver. He might mix some things up, make it a little bit harder for the Bills. What can we expect from a defense led by Weaver?
Yeah, I think mix it up, Maddie, is probably the right word. I think that's the biggest thing that Anthony Weaver's bringing. A lot of the players really love the fact that he's inclusive with them and their planning. Vic Fangio has had a lot of success in this league, but Vic Fangio is very much a "this is my defense" type of guy. And there was definitely some rumblings last year of, they didn't move their cornerbacks much. They played one side. They didn't move Jalen Ramsey in the slot or let him play different positions like he's been really good at. They didn't send a lot of blitzes at all, and they didn't adjust a ton when people had different elements that were having success against them. And so we already saw in week 1 against Jacksonville, Anthony Weaver is willing to blitz. Anthony Weaver's willing to move Jalen Ramsey around, and I believe there's going to be different looks. Now, that doesn't matter if Josh Allen decides to take off and hurdle another defender like he did Budda Baker last week. But I do think that this will be a fun challenge, a little bit of a different mindset, seeing this style of defensive coordinator. They're trying to resemble the Ravens defense, where you're seeing so many different looks pre-snap that you don't know exactly what is coming your way. And we haven't seen the fullness of it. It's only week 1, but I'd imagine they have a few tricks in their bag for Josh Allen in Buffalo.
Cameron, thanks so much for spending some time with us. Enjoy the game tomorrow night.
Appreciate you. Bring your raincoat. Might be a little rainy out there, it sounds like.
Ah, interesting. Thanks, Cameron. Appreciate the time.